The recording is in progress.
Mababu Malele, ancestors forever. Mababu Malele, ancestors forever.
Oops, sorry about that. just a note before we go any further. When I click, well, actually, when anyone, can you take me off of the co-host, Andrew, because Prince Andrew, because it turns everything off when it pops up on my screen. But Mayati and Oshuni, I see that you are both are co-hosts. So when it pops up on yours, if you let folks in, that'll be helpful.
Oh,
And so
sure. Just a moment, please.
okay.
I made I made the adjustment.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And so we always began each week with a ancestral quote, and we have lately been doing this one from Dr. Maya Angelou, which simply invites each of us to take a day to heal from the lies we've been told and the ones we have told ourselves, especially the ones we've told ourselves. And so we draw your attention to a couple of disclaimers. One, the sessions are recorded, and at some point there'll be live streams, so feel free to change your screen name and turn your video off if you do not wish to be identified during recording. Also, all attendees, please put your name, organization, if applicable, and your best contact information for any upcoming events and any questions or comments for our presenters. Disclaimer, the information presented in this program today and days to come is strictly for educational purposes. Information presented is not intended to serve as a substitute for diagnosis, treatment, or advice from a qualified licensed medical professional. Even though we work very hard to have qualified licensed medical professionals here, but any treatment choices and protocols that you consider should be discussed with your physician and other licensed medical professional of your choice. And just a note, in this space, we believe in informed consent. So we welcome you today. We've kind of rebranded a little bit of the programming. So the name going forth is Let's Talk, Let's Heal, the Prophet Cox Show. It may at some point also be podcast, but we're working on piece by piece, so keep us in prayer. Today is Tuesday, May 31st, 2022. And we start each week at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Time. I am Prophet Anyanwu Cox, and the Let's Talk, Let's Heal Prophet Cox Show is a humanitarian enterprise in association with the Unity Health Network Node, the Global UnityNet, Safe Healthy Spaces, Kansas. I am Amari International, the International Institute for Health and Wellness, Reconciliation Ministry Without Walls, Andrew Networks, Awu, Oshunye, Reynolds, and other content experts. And some of you may very well be those. So we also take a moment to listen to the talking drums. It's only 1 minute just to bring us again home to our space and as Mother Africa, the origin of all mankind, or the place of our origin. And I failed to mention over on the right, and we'll hear a little bit more about that in a second, are the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, and there's 17 of them. These health-related programming is working with, or at least working from 6 of those sustainable goals, which has to do with good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, decent work and economic growth, reduce inequities, and partnerships for the goals. You'll hear a little bit more about that in a few minutes. We want to give a special thank you to Andrew Networks, who makes these platforms possible and brings people together with their dreams so that you could go forth and share your knowledge, wisdom, skills, and talent. And the PARXTC Export Trading Company develops influences, which is a part of this network, influences and coordinates strategic alliance outcomes for tribes, nations, non-governmental organizations, agencies, businesses, projects, communities of peoples, and individuals throughout AFC, FTA, and globally. And so Prince Andrew is usually behind the scenes, but he will at some point, if possible today, tell us a little bit more about that. And so we began.
Ladies and gentlemen, Marsha Ambrosius, Lettuce, Kelly Price, and Jill Scott.
My skin is black. My arms are long. My hair is woolly and my back is strong. Strong enough to take the pain inflicted again and again. What do they call me? My name is Aunt Sarah. Aunt Sarah. My skin is yellow. My hair is long. Between two worlds, I do belong. Yeah. My father was rich and wide. He forced my mother late one night. So what do they call me? My name's Saffronia. Saffronia. Yeah. My skin is tanned. My hair is fine. My hips might invite you, daddy. My mouth like wine. Who's little girl and mine? Anyone who has money to buy. What do they call me? My name is Sweet Thing. Sweet Thing. My skin is brown. My manner is tough. I'll kill the first mother I see. Hey, my life has been rough. I'm awfully bitter these days because my parents were slaves. Ooh, what do they call me? What do they call me? My name is Peaches.
Living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out.
Now is the time for all of us to stand up and say enough is
We gon' walk
enough.
it out and on dance.
Less than 100 years ago, women did not have the right to vote. If you were black, white, Mexican, Asian, Muslim, educated, poor, or rich, if you were a woman, it did not matter.
And I rise up, I like the waves, I rise up, in spite of the ache, I rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again.
We came to thrive, we came to get educated, we came to be entrepreneurs, we came to contribute.
Human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights, once and for all.
All we need is hope, and for that we have each other, and for that we have each other. And
When you grow up with that kind of obstacle and you still rise, give them a sense of distance from where they are now that they can go the distance. Even if you don't have the answers, give them hope.
I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I will rise 1,000 times again.
And so we rise. And so in this space, we talk about healing and health and wellness in mind, body, and in spirit for all people and for all life on the planet. And so let me just lower this. I have some affirmations here. Treasures gathered by Queen Afua. Some of you may know her, some may not. And to ask the question, what would you do to heal planet Earth, or at least of this particular volume that she's drawing this from? What would you do to heal planet Earth? It calls for healers to unite throughout the diaspora, and I added and beyond. So these are daily healing, planet healing meditations or affirmations. So I'm going to go through them real quick. I apologize for reading to you, but think of them as affirmations. You can read it with me. You can pick one out that you might want to do every day, but I'm going to read them all today. So it starts with, may we collectively heal. Is there a question or someone just needs to be muted? May we collectively heal our planet by healing ourselves one to another. May we spread love, serenity, wellness to all our planetary sisters and brothers. May we live in alignment with the forces of nature as we harmonize with air, atmosphere, fire, sun, water, oceans, rivers, lakes, and streams, and earth, soil, and plants. Let us collectively tune up our body, mind, and spirit to our highest frequency of well-being. May we end the health disparity that has plagued humanity. May we claim our freedom now from all social, economic, relationship, physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual disease. May we align ourselves in oneness with the natural, bountiful, beautiful tapestry of creation. May we all awake, honor, and respect the healer within. and live a holistic life of health and longevity. May we unify as we purify, ending all war, separation, suffering, and greed that has consumed the earth. May we tap into the natural wisdom of the ages as we heal ourselves, that we may heal planet Earth and the entire world family. And for those who are so inclined, Ashe. So I am Prophet Anyanwu Cox, and I won't go through all of this. I want to get our guest on. He has a lot to share, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions and discussion. But I've spent over 40 years, I have over 40 years of experience specializing in mental health, complementary, alternative, and integrative therapies, addiction, trauma, death, dying, life transitions, and support. I am an ordained minister, holistic practitioner for over 30 years of service and engagement, advocacy, and education with diverse populations, which includes diverse ages, ethnicities, socioeconomic backgrounds, genders, and communities primarily across the United States, as well as UK, India, Africa, Jamaica, and Canada. I'm also an institute elder with the African American Council of Elders in Wichita. I'm one of the institute elders at the National Black Council of Elders, and I serve on the steering committee, the health committee, and I am counted among the wisdom keepers of the National Black Council of Elders. One of 15 African Americans with the 400 Years of African American History Commission, which was a public law put in place in 2018. Chaired the Education Committee, Education and Outreach Committee for the UN Permanent Forum of People of African Descent. But that's a part of, I'm sorry, let me go back because that's a little different. Chair of the Education and Outreach Subcommittee for the International Civil Society Working Group for the UN Permanent Forum of People of African Descent. Also affiliate member of Association of Black Psychologists, a part of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, also known as NCOBRA, the Delaware Chapter, Health Committee, Unity Health Network Node Lead, and one of the co-administrators. I'm a lead trainer with Salbono Healing Circles, a licensed EEC facilitator, Ubuntu Healing Circles facilitator with the Black Psychologists, which was created by the Black Psychologists, the Association of Black Psychologists, and the Community Healing Network, which offers culturally specific intergenerational healing circles for persons of African descent. And I won't go over my list of holistic and complementary therapies. I've been doing those for quite a long time, and you can peruse this real quickly, from Reiki to healing touch, to aromatherapy, to breath therapy, to stress and anger management, reflexology, and so on and so forth. So we're going to have, take a look very quickly. This is a 2-minute video, and it just gives us a quick summary of the United Nations 17 sustainable goals, which we all work toward in our own special way.
The United Nations is an organization with goals of peace and sustainable development around the world. Their mission is huge, but we're breaking it down in 2 minutes. 17 sustainable development goals. Let's get to them, cause the more you know. Look, in some corners of the world today, people are living on $1 a day. Hey, that's not how it ought to be. So goal 1, eliminate poverty, and goal 2, root out hunger across the globe. There's 800 million people hungry, if you want to know. Number 3 is health and well-being, and getting people the health care that they need in. Learning in school are the harder goal 4. Education opens up minds and doors. Goal number 5 is empower girls and women so they can have the same rights that men are given. Number 6, people need water that's clean. Poor sanitation can spread disease. Carbon-free energy is goal number 7, and how to achieve it is the question that's pressing. But if we put our minds together and work hard, we can find a solution, I'm guessing. 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it. 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it. Now Imagine that you work all day for no pay. Economic growth and decent work is goal 8. Goal number 9 is to foster innovation in infrastructure and industrialization. Goal number 10, inequality reduction. 11 is sustainable city construction. 12, well, that's sustainable consumption. So what we use matches up with production. Goal 13 calls for urgent action to combat climate change, cause we know it's happening. 14, protect life under seas. 15, protect life on land. Goal 16 is for peace and justice. All over the planet, they're in high demand. And the final goal, number 17, is the critical factor, the heart of the machine. It's the strength in the way we achieve these goals of sustainable development around the globe. Yo, 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it. 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it.
Yes, indeed. Whatever bed we make, we'll have to lie in. Of course, we've already made a bed that we have to make some adjustments with. Either we made them, others made them, we're laying in it anyway. So the question becomes, what bed are we going to make for ourselves and for our children and our descendants? So this is just a quick chart, and then we're going to move on to our guests. So if you want to screenshot it or something, feel free to. These are the sustainable goals. Think about the work that you're involved in and how these may fit. And even if you're not involved in any major work, if you have something in your home or your community or something that you're doing that you can bring peace, justice, stronger institutions, support no poverty and leaving none behind, zero hunger. So in your own way, we invite you to participate as well. So here we are for today. We are still, this is our last day actually of Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're closing out the month. It's also the month for Africa Day, and some call it Africa Week and some call it Africa Month. So kind of all coming together and closing out this month. We have a very special guest, and he asked the question, how do you create and engage extended families in community trauma healing, which he will be covering today. And so this is Dr. Onaji Jua Osondu Abdul Mueed. And one second, because I'm going to switch over shortly. But this is a little bit about him. He can tell you more later, but he holds a doctorate and master's degree. He holds a doctorate and master's degree in social work, a license in mental health counseling, credentials in substance abuse and family development counseling. He was inducted as a fellow into the New York Academy of Medicine in 2016, based upon his stellar career as a consummate behavioral health social work clinician and administrator spanning 35 years of service. Dr. Mueed was a student of progenitor human rights pioneer El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz, AKA Malcolm X, had his human rights career launched as the United Nations non-governmental organization representative for the International Human Rights Association for American Minorities as early as 1997 by an appointment by the late Dr. Y.N. Clyde. His assignments included, but not limited to, a delegate to the establishment of the International Criminal Court proceedings in the United Nations World Conference Against Racism in 2001. His social work career records a 35-year history researching and organizing around the demand of repair, particularly the rehabilitation aspects of reparations. His social work career sought to deconstruct and decolonize societal concepts, paradigms, and structures, policies, programs, and practices. He has served in a multitude of social work positions as counselor, administrator, academic advisor, and adjunct lecturer at Columbia University. His unique perspective equally brings both the human services and human rights disciplines together. So what I'm going to do now is stop sharing so that I can bring up his slides and begin, let him begin presentation. 1 second. Can everyone see that? I think I have that correct. Let me just go back out for, is that correct, Dr. Amui? Was that correct? You can
You
unmute.
stop sharing.
Yes, I had to check myself off from you. Yes, it is. That's the slide.
Okay, let me go back in and do it again, okay? Just to make sure that I have. It wasn't exactly what I was thinking. Hold on a second. So if I start here and go, that's what I wanted. Okay, there we are. So let me close this out. And bring you Dr. Mueed. With great pleasure, I bring you Dr. Mueed.
Thank you so very much for all of you who have worked diligently to bring this healing space to the world, and certainly for the invitation you extended to me to share some of my thoughts. So the first thing I have to do in the African tradition is ask the elders, do I have permission to start?
That would be me, yes. I think I'm the oldest one here.
Yes, you have permission.
Thank you very much. So a little bit of background. I'm the executive director and founder of Wahine Misu Healing Well Incorporated. Wahine Misu is a Kemet word, that place upon which now Egypt is used as its name, but the real name of the place is Wahine Misu, which means rebirth. It also means a national program of the cultural restoration, particularly in the spirit of Ma'at, of order, balance, and harmony. I'm also the co-chair of NCOBRA's Health Commission. NCOBRA, as you heard earlier, is the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. Next slide, please. So what is it all about? It's all about the children. How do we have children laughing? How do we have children skipping, as we all have experienced in our lives? How do we bring this, create a world where that can return to those type of joyful moments? Next slide. So hopefully today I'd like to cover three aspects: understanding trauma, mental health, social health, and public health in the social, economic, physical, political, and historical environments; social well-being, understanding social health and the social cultural stress model; and lastly, to affirming historical resilience and resistance, legacies, creating social wellness agendas, and demanding reparations. Next slide. I want to thank Larry Duncan. For those of you who were here last month, he did a phenomenal job in terms of just creating the basis for mental health. It was really just a well put together presentation. So those of you who might not have been here for that, I encourage you to get the recording and listen to it, because this is really like a part two. Next slide. He talked about mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. This, in fact, is his slide. Factors that contribute to mental health include your genes, your brain chemistry, life experiences such as abuse or traumatic experiences, as well as family history of mental problems. And he went on to say that many mental health consequences, illness consequences, comes from, in fact, the environment. And he spoke about 400 years of slavery, of colonialism, of sharecrop system, that which many people here in America have in fact faced. But of course, all around the world, we have similar types of mass traumas taking place. Next slide. So some of you already know about ACEs, is Adverse Childhood Experiences, a study done maybe about 20 years ago. In addition to the ACEs, we consider the impact of a variety of other traumas of chronic toxic stress on the body, on the mind, and on a community. Next slide. So we know through EKGs that when someone experiences a trauma, it's going to impact their brain chemistry, how the brain works. And in fact, if the trauma occurs at an early age, it means that that brain, that growing brain, that child's brain will be just that much more damaged or impacted by the trauma itself. And it can be a physical trauma as well as an emotional trauma. Next slide. We know that the brain is looked upon in terms of the brainstem, the midbrain, the limbic brain, the cortex. And we know that the brain is hardwired for our protection. Anytime there's a threat, there is a natural reaction to fight, to flee, to freeze. And we know that that's the body's way of shutting down all the other functions. And certainly the first one to go is the cortex. The second is the limbic and midbrain. And when the body is, when the amygdala isn't controlling our actions, we lose our ability to perform as we normally would when we have full access to the cortex. So as we talk about trauma, we're going to talk about how this is related to social health and social well-being. Next slide. Keep on pressing, it's going to show up the same cone. We know that the body develops from, the brain develops from the bottom up, right? Brainstem, midbrain, limbic, cortex. Thank you. Next slide. So when we look at stress, we know that there's 3 levels or 3 aspects of stress. And there is such a thing called good stress or positive stress, e-stress, when we're in a certain zone that allows us to look at things, analyze things, be productive in our life. That's the zone we want to be in. But we also know that if we go too far to the left or too far to the right, there's going to be a social function consequence. If we don't have enough stress, this is called distress, where you're static, you're not moving, you're not getting out of the bed. We know if that persists, we move into depression, okay? And also, if you go to the right, if it's too much stress and too excited, we start to overtax ourselves. Cortisol, which is called the stress hormone, gets excited over and over again. That's only supposed to be used in very discrete circumstances, and that creates something which is called weathering. So how does this work? Let's go to the next slide. So the last slide was just talking about the basic ways in which stress impacts us, right? But there's something called the mundane extreme environmental stress. And this is in the article, A Better Understanding of African Americans, Understanding the Social Cultural Stress Model. The article is really a required reading. And they say that there's an A, there's a B, there's a C, and there's an X. A is the stressor, which is the outside world. B is how that stressor impacts and pulls from your resources and your coping mechanisms. C, which is also very important, how does the family understand? What is their interpretation of what has taken place? And then that's going to result in an X, which is either crises or resilience. And when we look at this chart, we see that mundane means daily. It means it's omnipresent. Extreme means not little, but large. And of course, we know this to be true, sadly so, just a few weeks ago in terms of the Buffalo massacre. And this is a permanent environment of stress, of extreme stress. All that is to say, that is a way of showing you how oppression shows up. What happens to a people, to a group that's under constant oppression? And we can understand it within this mundane extreme environment stress diagram. And you can see things as race and class and gender and sexuality and skin tone. You see racism, sexism, heterosexism, colorism, right? All of these things are taking place in the developmental mind of that individual that the family is imposing, that was formerly imposed by the society itself. Next slide. So when we talk about mental health and mental illness, we have to go back at least in the first chronology to 1952, which was the first statistical diagnostic statistical manual in 1952. And the thing which always creates great curiosity for me is that how is it that the first law that the United States government created was on nationality? And they say that the person has to be white. This is 1790. That stayed on the books up until 1952. And it's just a very curious thing how in that same year, was it coincidence? I don't know, that now you have this diagnostical statistical manual that objectified and pathologized the behaviors of people of African descent after their slavery, after decades of apartheid. So we have who's white, who can be a citizen, white. And in the same year, this manual comes out. Very curious. Next slide. You know, when you think of mental wellness, you think of freedom. You think of, you know, I can be myself, I can speak, I can have relationships. When we speak about mental wellness and mental health, we're thinking about all that is contained in freedom. Now, there's two types of freedom, freedom in black and white. For white, it means freedom to do whatever I want. Now, we must understand the freedom in which white people, those people have become known as white anyway. All this is taking place inside the colonial project, right? The goal of the colonial project was to acquire land, to acquire rulership over the people they would conquer for the purpose of exploitation. And we see the height of this exploitation in the system of capitalism. Sometimes it's called cowboy capitalism, right? Monopoly capitalism. So for the white person, it's like, oh, freedom means I can just have all the world as my oyster, as they say. Next slide. Let's go back a little bit. To understand the history of mental health, particularly for people of African descent in the United States, we have to go back to 1851, when this doctor said it's a mental illness for these slaves to run away. And this is going to be called drapetomania. And of course, it's a pseudoscience, but so is race. There's no such thing biologically as race, but there is such a thing called social political race, but not biological. And he defined it as a mental illness that caused blacks to run away. And the treatment was to beat them. If this is a mental illness, what is the treatment? Oh, well, the treatment is to beat them. This is the first thing that appeared relating mental health or mental illness to people of African descent. And it still happens today. The same thinking is still in place. Next slide. So it made me think, okay, let's understand the runaway black body, right? Captives, not slaves, but enslaved. They didn't define themselves as slaves. That was forced upon them, right? This black body in this pursuit of freedom is running away. And when we think of mental health, you would have to understand for that person who's a captive, their mental health is always in the pursuit of freedom and always escaping oppression. Next slide. So for black, it's freedom from tyranny and oppression. For the white, it's freedom to do anything I want. Next slide. So we are speaking about trauma, and trauma is any type of distressing event or experience that can have an impact on a person's ability to cope and function. Trauma can result in emotional, physical, and psychological harm. Many people will experience some kind of trauma event, from the unexpected death of a loved one to a motor vehicle accident at some point in their life. But there's something called historical trauma, which not talks about everyday experiences, but talks about a mega reality. Next slide. My dear friend, Dr. Maria Yellowhorse Braveheart said that historical, this slide is speaking to historical trauma, right? Historical trauma theory is a relatively new concept in public health. The premise of this theory is that populations historically subjugated to long-term massive traumas such as colonialism, slavery, war, and genocide exhibit a higher prevalence of disease even several generations after the original trauma occurred. And of course, we know this study goes back to studying families of the Holocaust, which was a terrible human rights violation, their genocide. Next slide. So my friend, dear friend, Maria Braveheart introduced the term historical trauma to describe this specific trauma that Native peoples experience in the United States. And she says it's the cumulative emotional and psychological wounding across generations, including one's own lifespan. While historical trauma is a result of a century of colonization and abuses, Braveheart highlighted the effects of separation of families and forced assimilation of the boarding school experience. So when you look at a people, particularly who are dominated by a nation state, you will always see these institutions of separation, of demeaning, and always denying their culture. So it wasn't up until, 1970 or so, when indigenous people had the right to go back to their original religions, their way of spirituality. Next slide. So for people of African descent, we call this the Ma'afa. It's a key Swahili term that means disaster or calamity or terrible occurrence. So if you look at, if you go back to the Berlin Conference in 1885, and the colonization of Africa, and you bring it all the way up, we can even go back to the 1500s in terms of when Portugal invaded Africa. But right now we're saying 1885. So this Ma'afa is this continuous war against African people on their body, on their mind, on their ideas, on their reality. We call it the ontological breach. The ontological breach of a people. And we're still living in this Ma'afa. And indeed, we need to take a day to heal from the lies we've been told and the ones you've told yourself. Next slide. So how do we put this in some type of conceptual framework? We talked about adverse childhood experiences, and it's around 13 of them. Were your parents, did they experience mental illness? Was any of your family incarcerated? Was it early pregnancy? It's about 13 different indices that they use. And the study showed, Kaiser Permanente showed that the higher number of adverse childhood experiences you had, the greater the propensity for you to experience heart failure, kidney failure, substance abuse 50 years later. Very important study to know about. But people went ahead and went further and say, well, it's not only those experiences that one may experience in their family domain, but when there is social conditions, right, that genocide, slavery, all this is connected to generational embodiment of historical trauma. So now through the science of epigenetics, we know that trauma is being passed down from one generation to the next. So now we have a way of understanding one's own individual traumas in their lifetime and also traumas across lifetimes. Next slide. So beyond adverse childhood experiences, something called adverse community environments, right? This is when not only one is experiencing the challenges of their current economic, social, cultural situation, but also the legacies of colonialism and genocide, the legacies that Dr. Martin Luther King said, domestic colonies that Black people are living in. So when you look at poverty, discrimination, community disruption, lack of opportunity, that's not just a one generation reality. This goes back to the very founding of the United States of America. The very founding of this country was a war against African people and a war against indigenous people. So much so that we have the Indian killer, Jackson, who was known for that. And how many Native women are missing today? Not only in the United States, but throughout Canada as well. How many Black women are in fact missing today? And we don't even hear a peep of it, not a word. So it's not just the individual ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. We must look at it in the larger context of adverse community environments that continues to produce the trauma, that continues to produce the hurt, and therefore continues to produce these statistics, these horrid health statistics. Next slide. So when we speak of public health harm, certainly what would come to mind is the Tuskegee experiment, or the experiment at Tuskegee, as they want us to know, because it wasn't their experiment, it was the National Public Health Administration's experiment. And this is really hard to contemplate. For 40 years, there was this experiment on Black men without consent, told that they're here to help them with their blood problems, bad blood, and we're going to give you medicine. So it wasn't just a question of a lack of informed consent, it was deceit, purposeful deceit to get their voluntary participation. And you know, we look at this and we kind of gloss over like, well, that was a long time ago. Well, no, it's not a long time ago, because these same type of abuses is happening today. Next slide. 1932, the U.S. Public Health Services worked with Tuskegee Institute and studying syphilis. The study initially involved 600 Black men, 399 with syphilis, 201 who did not have the disease. Participants informed consent was not collected. When we, you know, with the enormity of this, right? So we talk about mental health. We're talking about living in a society where the National Public Health Administration experiments on you. Next slide. In the field of medical anthropology is charged with exploring how cultures define health outcomes and how health determines culture within a given population. Culture is here defined here as a continuous process by which humans create and communicate shared values, customs, and knowledge within a society. Health is here defined as a state and process by which individuals promotes well-being and quality of life. The World Health Organization says that wellness is not just the absence of disease. It's really experiencing the state of mental, physical, psychological health. Next slide. When we speak about public health, there was a book that I would recommend for everyone to get, and all of you are health advocates. I would encourage you to get this book. It's called The Social Health of a Nation by Marengoff. And what he shows in this book is that, well, you can't know anything if it's not studied. Well, if there's no mandate for that study, then you won't have information. So he is saying that we need an index of social health that would be aligned with the concept of the Dow Jones average. And he says that he comes up with about 13 or 14 indicators of what would show, what would assess social health in the people. Now, I need to make a point here. As a human rights activist, nation is a social designation. It's not a political one. That is to say, there's a difference between a nation and a state. So when most people are using nation, they're using it incorrectly. Because in America, you have at least 9 different nations. You probably have around 15 or more than that. Why? Because all of indigenous people, they are different, distinct nations. we kind of clump them all together, but they're not. They are separate nations. Even people of African descent is in fact a nation of people. Why? Because they have a common language, they have a common history, they have a common culture. But this is only recognized, this is not recognized by this particular government. And I'm particularly referring to the Declaration on Minorities that talks about what is called the national minority. So much of our language limits and delimits us. So we need to speak about nation in the way that it's intended. So when we understand that there are multi-nations in the United States, then America is not a nation, it's a multinational nation. And in that, we can talk about group rights, we can talk about human rights. But I would say get this book because it gives us indication of the kind of work that we want to do to correct these health indices, which are so out of sync. Next slide. So for my doctorate, what I wanted to do is say, how can I understand the trials and tribulations of families who are living in oppressed environments, and how can I go about providing one of possible solutions? So Wahine Misu, I had said before, is a Kemet word that means rebirth and also a national program of cultural recovery, particularly using Ma'at, order, balance, and harmony. So the Wahine Misu Healing World method seeks to employ the Autonomous Healing Center in healing the mind of the oppressed. Autonomous Healing Center comes out of the work of Marino, J.L. Marino, who created psychodrama, which I am a psychodramatist. So it's very important for people to find that healing center, not only for themselves personally, but in their family and their community and their nation. So that they in turn could heal social relationships on a family, community, and nation level, and people level, to make people whole who had their ontological cultural structure raptured by national oppression, with intent to destroy their identity, their self-proclaimed purpose and positive direction. That is future development. So when the people are denied their identity, when they're denied their purpose, when they're denied their direction, which we can summarize as being culture, how does it happen? It happens because this society attempts to make people ahistorical, don't really know your history, apolitical, you don't really know the power you have in your hand right now. And right now, of course, the assault of voting rights is just at an all-time high, and people don't have a futuristic in themselves. If you can make a people ahistorical, apolitical, and futuristic, you've oppressed them. And they'll continue to stay in that oppression until they begin to raise their consciousness and begin, as Paulo Freire says, to see, to analyze, and to act. So Wahine Misu is this place where it's a healing, it's a psychodrama intervention that attempts to help people along that path of self-healing. Next slide. It's based upon what is called the trauma atom. And you start off with strengths on the left side, which are called prescriptive roles. How are these roles? What's my personal strength, interpersonal strength, transpersonal strength? You bring those things into being so that people can actually move to the point of looking at how trauma was internalized in their mind. How does the perpetrator live in the oppressed person's mind? How does the abandoning authority live in the mind of the oppressed? And how does the victim live inside the mind of the oppressed? So if we have this triangle that's constantly ordering the steps and the thinkings and the behaviors of the oppressed, they will stay in a process of disempowerment and therefore oppression. So how do we move them to the right side of the circle, where they can have what is called the ultimate authority? They can have they can find them the role of being the appropriate authority for themselves, where they can become a good parent, a good person, a good student, whatever pursuits of life. So much of Marino's theory had to do with role identity, that we assume different roles in life, and as a result of assuming these roles, we begin to experience life in different kinds of ways. So we want to be clear of how one is currently experiencing life through these roles and where do they want to go. And using psychodrama, particularly the work of Dr. Kate Hudgens, who has created the therapeutic spiral method as a way of understanding this. And she, was a student of Marino's in the, I think, the 60s, 70s. And she, as having a PhD in clinical psychology, she was saying, wait a minute, we need to put some more protective factors into the classical psychotherapy, psychodrama, so that we're not re-traumatizing the people when we are saying that we're here to help them. So this was a major improvement. What I did in my doctorate is to say, how now can I take that, which you might be called the third iteration, and apply it particularly to people who've been oppressed through national oppression, through colonialism, through slavery. So next slide. So, we start off, we have what is called animal cards. We could have Indinka symbols. We could have many types of symbols that people will choose from to say, I want this to be my, what is called observing ego. It's also called compassionate witness. And I introduced the term internal ancestor. And after we get our strengths, then we move into a circle where we begin to share our realities, and from those realities, be able to move into the communal strength. So it's inner strength, it's family strength, and it's communal strength. So we're at a point where we are rewriting, next slide. We're at a point where we are rewriting the social welfare state. What do I mean by that? Well, social welfare state is basically a European concept that says that there are the deserving poor, and they must be tested to see if they qualify, right? It's a way in which the colonial project has morphed into a restriction and a control of the people, rather than saying everyone has the right to health, rather than saying everyone has a right to work, rather than saying that everyone has a right to food or any of the things that are necessary, right, to experience a high quality of life. So America has not signed on to the Covenant on Social and Cultural Rights. It's signed on to the Covenant on Political and Civil Rights, and even that, of course, isn't enforced. So rewriting the social welfare state is saying that we have to bring into existence the application of human rights into the reconstruction of societies. And we know that the first place to start is the just demand for reparations. Reparations is what? It's a public admission of guilt, of harm, of a criminal act. In 2001, the United Nations declared slavery a crime against humanity. And they went on to create the Decade for People of African Descent with the principles of recognition, justice, and development. And now we have what is called the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent that says now we have a seat at the table to look at the way in which particularly people of African descent around the world is being treated. But it's not just only African people, it's all people who have suffered the consequences of colonialism, who suffered the consequences of genocide, who have and are still suffering the consequences of domestic colonialism. It was Dr. Martin Luther King in 1967 who said that we must admit we're living, Black people are living in domestic colonies, and that they have the right to resources and the right of self-determination. So most people don't even know who Dr. Martin Luther King is because they keep feeding pablum in terms of I have a dream speech. But it was Dr. King who went to Ghana in '58 and saw their independence. So he always had a national thinking. His strategy was to create a society where everybody can be treated fairly. But we know the only way that we're going to do that is to make a demand. In different circles, people will say that they'll quote Frederick Douglass. It says, struggle never conceded without a demand. It never did. It may be a moral struggle, it may be a physical struggle, but it must be a struggle because where there's no struggle, there's no progress. And then the other day, someone said, well, yes, it must be a struggle, but it must be an organized struggle. And then someone went a step further saying it must be an organized struggle with consequences. So I'm saying that power never conceded without a demand, and therefore the people, the real humans, the ones of us who want equality and health for everyone, we have to begin to assess our power and begin to bring that forward. When we can start by whatever organization that you're with, start off with the Declaration of Human Rights, the 30 articles, and then move through the other covenants and protocols and procedures. And as you are having those discussions, you begin to see what's missing. And putting in place what's missing is in fact a process of decolonization. Next slide. So the way to get started is to quit talking about it and begin doing something about it. Next slide. In summary, trauma is the connecting core to mental health, social well-being, and public health. The work before us is to create a democracy not based upon white supremacy, but equal rights. A post-colonial period can only be approached with the movement of decolonization. So every endeavor in which we involve with, we must look at it carefully and see how is it continuing the values, the practices, and the consequences of colonialism. So we think that America is not a colony. It very much is so. If we look at the work of Dr. Yusef Klein, who wrote a book called The Anti-Social Contract, he starts right there with the Constitution and shows how in the very construct of the Constitution, you built in the colonial project, or you further continue the colonial project. And of course, we can see that the consequences are still in place. So when we say that these systems are not working, the system not working, we have really the wrong mindset. The systems are working in the way that they were created. And once we acknowledge that, we'll know that these systems must be changed if we, in fact, intend to have an equitable world, if, in fact, we intend to achieve the 17 social development goals by the United Nations. This is our work. This is before us. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. Next slide. So I want to thank you for your time and your attention as I presented a few of the ideas that I've been working with for the last 35, 40 years, and some of the work that is so, I think, vital and necessary to help us create a world where we all can have peace. Thank you very much.
Whoever muted me, thank you so much. I know I have some sound going on in the background. Thank you so very much. And the questions, discussion, this is our discussion time. I see Reverend Tandy in South Africa. I had a chance to meet her in Kansas City, Missouri, some many years ago. So thank you for a couple of people that I know in South Africa were having internet problems. That's the difficulty sometimes with these. That's why we're glad that it's live stream. Is that is it called backloading? Who remembers what is it called when they kind of, it rolls across the country and certain portions don't get the Wi-Fi? Questions?
Thank you so much. I just wanted to Thank you so much, Prophet Anyahu. This has just been the most awesome, beautiful presentation I've had on mental health and the factors that lead to it. So I would like to thank you, Dr. Muyanda. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. And yes, Prophet, we met like in 2001 when I was in Kansas City, Missouri, and I was studying to be a minister, and I was ordained in 2001. So I think we met between 1999 and 2001, and here we are again on the same mission of healing. So thank you so much, Prophet. It's a blessing. It's a true blessing to be connected with.
And to see that she,
it's called
Reverend reached out by WhatsApp and a platform I'm getting really familiar with now, looking for some information on like African-centered studies. That we had someone in a minister in California who had, is that what you were referencing once, Reverend Tandy, about Mary Kara, I think was his name. He had a whole Dogon thing, school for the kids and all that.
Yes, that's Mary Kara. They also called him Richard Baird.
Yes.
And yeah, he made his transition a few months ago. Yeah, at the age of 77. And he was such an awesome soul on Kemet and the spiritual principles. And he taught it in the unity circle. So it's a great ancestor that we give thanks for.
Yes, yes, yes. He did really good work. And I don't know if you're familiar with the association. It was not association anymore of Unity Churches, but some people who don't know Unity know the Daily Word. The Daily Word went around the world for years when people didn't really know that it was based on the teachings of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. But Mary Kara, or Reverend Richard Byrd, who's now deceased, he became aware from looking at the symbols around Unity Village that there were the Mayat wings. There were a lot of symbols there that tied in with Kemet. So he began to bring in the fact that the Unity teachings of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore were actually ancient Kemetic teachings. And he did begin to turn his ministry around so that we were out. I was out there for a fellowship with HIV some years ago, and I had to take my son who has some special needs, but they were willing to pick him up every single day and take him to the Dogon school. And so he was quite, we honor him in the realm of the ancestors. So thank you. I know her Wi-Fi was down earlier, and she said if it came on, she would jump on. So you were able to come on and get the whole presentation. But you all are, Dr. Muid, are you on WhatsApp? Because I could connect you. She wanted to get some more information and was looking for books and all that. She's actually, what part of South Africa are you in, Tandy?
I'm in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Okay.
Yes, and yes, we do have some problems. We call it load shedding.
Load shedding, that's what it's called.
Load shedding. There's just a huge sabotage going on in our country with Eskom, the distributor of electricity. So it's just, yeah.
So you think it's purposeful?
South Africa is, I think it's, you know, you don't have a country, just think about it. In this country, we have people that actually go underground and steal electricity cables. Where in the world have you heard that? They dig underground and they steal electricity cable. They steal a relay line. So there is this huge economic sabotage of the country. Actually, you know, electricity symbolizes the power and it's energy. And you can't do anything without energy. And it's like this project of destabilizing the country. There's no energy. And sometimes, like yesterday, the whole night, there was no different parts of South Africa, but there's no energy. And we produce our own coal, but the situation is quite dire.
That's an interesting word, to destabilize. That's a very interesting word. Okay, I see a hand. I don't know if Dr.
Yeah,
Bef-
I think,
Say again?
are you talking to me? Oh, I thought someone wanted to talk. I
No.
truly think they,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, you know, this, because you see, there is an economic sabotage of the country and the production of electricity, because you wonder, why would there be so many people, I mean, thieves who actually dig meters, you know, or you call it feet, underground to steal electrical cables in a big city like Johannesburg.
Hmm.
And it happens. And you find, you know, the traffic lights not working and load shedding because electrical cables have been stolen.
Hmm.
However, for the
And
purposes
that's the
of
reality that we're living with.
however, for the purposes of today's comment, did you have any comment about the presentation that was made?
Oh,
Yes. That was the best that she had. Go ahead, Tandi.
No, I was just responding to the prophet's question about load shedding. You know,
Yes.
what the load shedding is about, and I was just giving her today's mental health. I think South Africa is absolutely there. You know, the collective trauma of apartheid. You know, we have the collective trauma of apartheid is still not healed. And I truly think this presentation is so much needed in our country, because we have the, you know, violence and gender-based violence. All those are symptoms of unhealed collective trauma.
Absolutely.
And the professor, you know, talked at it, and there wasn't, you see, in South Africa, the you know, in 1994, when we independent, I personally think there was too much hurry into, you know, reconciliation. We had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was chaired by the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission have not been implemented. And the recommendations of the Truth and of that commission, amongst other things, was the need for reparations. And so that has not been done. It's like what, almost 26 years since 1994, most of those recommendations have not been done, and people are still unhealed. I'm now talking just, you know, on the TRC commission, and they said, you know, so there was too much emphasis on reconciliation, and we are a rainbow nation and we go together, you know, from now onwards. But it's not like that. You know, there's still a lot of healing, emotional wounds, trauma, collective trauma that has to be healed, you know, through, and that has not been addressed. And it you know, like the factors that the professor was talking about, substance abuse and violence and internalized hatred. Yeah, so that's my comment on that. It is just so much needed. Really, I just was in tears on some of the things that he was saying, because that is so much relevant in South Africa. Black people are experiencing the same thing all over the world.
That is true. And so just as, because I have another hand up, is I'll be sending you a link, I think I have, but then your internet may not be working. The permanent forum, and Dr. Mui mentioned that the permanent forum on people of African descent, that was a resolution passed in August 2nd of last year, launches in December, but it is another piece to something that was called the Decade for People of African Descent, again, trying to settle some of these issues and bring some equity to it, starting in 2015. But like South Africa, the decade, which went from 2015 to 2024, most people African descent or otherwise in this country don't even know it existed, and it's almost over. So last year in August, when the permanent form was established, that gave us something that, but it's just starting. It's not, doesn't have flesh and bones on, it's flesh and whatever on it. We have to actually work for it. So everybody, anyone of African descent, 1.6 billion on the planet can become a part of it. I'll keep sending that to you. So when you see the permanent form on people of African descent, just know that's an initiative at the United Nations. Dr. Mui knows about that too. I wanted to give him a chance to respond to any of your comments before I get to Natasha. Hold tight, Natasha. Dr. Mui.
Yes, this is the first time I'm hearing about this theft of copper, and I think it points to desperation and not having economies that would sustain the population. So the consequence, nonetheless, is destabilization, even though it may not be the intent, because people try to find a way to survive. I'm not explaining or condoning. I'm saying that any group of people who find themselves impoverished are going to look around and see what's available at hand. And that's why the 17 United Nations Sustainable Goals are so important for us to embrace and be able to assist wherever we live, and also assist people in other places as well. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Thank you so much. And you're, Dr. Malik, you're on WhatsApp. I don't know that I've communicated with you that way. Do you?
I am on it. I think the email I use for that is Muid, MUID-MSW@gmail. I think that's what I use. As you can see, I'm not too up to date. Most of my studies and community work keeps me pretty close to the ground. But certainly people can contact me through email if they choose. I'll put it in the chat just in case people want to.
I'm just getting used to the WhatsApp. And so Natasha, I see your hand up first.
Yes, thank you. I was the closing statement, Dr. Muid, your closing statement on our challenges to create a democracy not built on white supremacy, but on equal rights. That was very thoughtful to me. I am working with somebody presently, writing an op-ed in response to the massacre in Buffalo. And mind you, I've never submitted an op-ed before and don't know what this one will be accepted. But I would like to quote you, because I think that is very, very. I think that was very thoughtful to me in that, and when it addresses the whole issue of the issue of that lie of white supremacy not being dealt with, and the challenge that anything is going to significantly change until that is illuminated. So that profoundly affected me.
Thank you. I was listening to a woman from Buffalo who ran for mayor. I can't think of her name at the moment, but in her talk, she was saying normal never worked for Black people. Normal, anything, education, economics, you name it, normal never worked for us, because the normal is a colonial construct. Because we know that race came about moving back in the 1700s, came up with this notion of race. There was no such thing before that, and it's hard for us to contemplate, like, if there's no such thing as race, where did it come from? It came from Europeans who wanted to create a world of dominance and then use it as a way of not just classification, but it was a hierarchy. And when I used to teach at Columbia University, I used to give the definitions of races. And even though no one used it, why is it in 2000, I was teaching in 2015, 16, 17, why is it that people today can still match the definition to the people they're talking about? Why is that so? Because there is this preponderance of cultural icons and messengers that constantly reinforces it. So it's not just the avert straight pronouncement of these things. They're happening subliminally, and they're happening in all kinds of messages. And so we have to look for them to see where they exist, and we have to name them, and we have to deconstruct them. Anytime we allow anything that affronts the dignity of a human being, we have to stand up for that, because if we don't, we become accomplices.
Ashe. Thank you. Ashe.
Ashe. I see Prince Andrew's hand up.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for today's very informative information. And I just want to address one of the most recent comments that you made about the relevance, for example, of the Sustainable Development Goals. As you know, here in the United States, there have been decades of denial of the relevance of the United Nations, primarily perhaps because of the shifting demographics of the organization since it began. However, Juneteenth of 2021, there was a study that was completed by Howard University and the Sustainable Development Network that addressed the issue of the Sustainable Development Goals here in the United States. And it was found that none of the 50 states in the United States are even halfway to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. However, it may be no surprise to you that the ones most left furthest behind are those of the Native Americans, of the African American descent, and those of Latinx communities. So in the chat, I did put the link to this page that I'm sharing with you now. Also, there was a YouTube video that was produced back in 2021 for the Global Leaders Summit. I put that link in there as well. Tomorrow, there's going to be the next annual event for this Global Leadership Summit, and this is held by the United Nations Global Compact. So I would urge those of you who have an interest to contact Prophet Cox. I'll inbox her invitation so that if you so choose, you can participate. Normally there's a $500 fee, but as a member of the United Nations Global Compact, the 5 Points Youth Foundation can comp your ticket. So if it's of an interest to you, I'll provide that to Prophet Cox, because the more we are able to contribute to these dialogues, the more we'll be able to have information that we can deliver to our children whose narrative it is that we have to co-create. So I want to first thank you again for bringing these to our attention. And for the comments in South Africa, it's a very difficult conversation to have because it was in 2009 when I was on the negotiating team that successfully secured Senegal to be the sponsor of the 2009 Millennium Development Awards that honored Desmond Tutu, that I first became aware and involved with this effort to engage this, what I call underutilized infrastructure that we can utilize as civil society to engage with both governments and businesses, that I think is even more relevant today. But perhaps Prophet Cox will address that on an upcoming session with yours and mine. But thank you so very much. I put the information in the chat, and I'll inbox Prophet Cox if you have an interest in attending the summit that begins tomorrow. Thank you.
You're bringing up a very important point, sir, and that is those peoples who have been victims of oppression, when they begin to sit at the table and have their thoughts recognized and used, then the whole society advances, because we are beginning to eradicate historical wrongs. It's the work of Dr. Maria Yellow's Braveheart, one of my teachers, who I studied with. It's the work of Dr. Joy DeGruy or Joy Leary, I forget which it is now, but her work in terms of post-traumatic slavery syndrome, right? So here are two social workers who are my teachers, because they were able to use that in their research for their doctorates. I was able to use it for my master's degree, and I was also able to use it for my doctorate degree. So you're talking about, we have to not just have a seat at the table, but we have to make sure that our voices are heard and that gets translated into public policy. So thank you so very much. And I think that's part of the liberatory process that we are taking place. And you mentioned the United Nations. And certainly the only reason we had the Durban Declaration in 2001, and also the decade, and also the Permanent Forum, is because the geopolitical landscape is changing because of the liberation movements in Africa, the liberation movements in Asia. And now we have to continue to liberate the world, right, from colonialism. That says that I'm superior to you, you are inferior to me. And one of the books I read a number of years ago is called The Cultural Reasons of European Oppression or of Racism, something like that, right? But in the book it says that all groups are egocentric or ethnocentric. Every group believes in itself, and it should. But when you say, but my belief is superior to yours, and because it is superior, I have the right to dominate you, and you have to follow my way of thinking, that's when we lose, that's when we go off track. And that's what the Colonial Project is saying, is that not only, so we go back to the discovery, right? The whole paper on discovery, and who, Spain on one side and Portuguese on the other side. I'm giving you right to conquer these lands, these pagans, and everything they have, you have the right to conquer them and steal from them, right? So we have to go back and challenge that, and that's what the world is challenging, that we all have a right to all the benefits of the earth, not just corporations and not just so-called development nations. And they're not developed at all, because development is spiritual, psychological, sociological development, not just technological. So we have to create new definitions of success. So thank you for lifting up that we all must step into that arena, whatever that is, and begin to give our voice to whatever we see, so that can inform the next generation. It was Fanon who said each generation, out of its own relative obscurity, must discover its mission, either to fulfill or to betray. And our generation today is being able to call racism a public health crisis and start to have the legislation that will be able to put historical trauma into our health systems. And from that point of view, move to saying that the repair has to equal the harm, which means it has to be a meager orientation, and must have reparations. Because where there's a crime, there's a criminal, there's a victim, and there's a harm, that a harm must be repaired. So when we all raise up the right of healing of everyone, the whole earth, in fact, begins to heal.
Well, thank you. Just two historical facts. In 1452, it was a papal bull that you're speaking about that did give the Crusaders the right to enslave and take all of the possessions of any of the heathens that you call them, or Saracens. But what was earlier mentioned about the Berlin Conference of 1885, a lesser well-known point, is that it was United States, the corrupt United States Congress, that first authorized or acknowledged King Leopold's right to own the entire Congo as his property, that he took to the Berlin Conference, that triggered what we now have. So I just want to have to say that as a resident and quote citizen of the United States, we too have to come to a truth and reconciliation point where it's important that we admit and then move forward from the harm that we've caused. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I wanted to just real quick, and then I open it up for questions again, is that, yeah, there's something about it too, because this is the Mental Health Awareness Month. And so it's just, it's really interesting that none of this colonization, enslaving, and raping and pillaging land is ever considered mental illness. And yet if someone's sad because someone died or the, girlfriend left, boyfriend left, whatever, when my son, and they would, of course this is live now, and he's okay now. When he was really, had dropped about 40 pounds, he wouldn't eat. He was, dragging around. We went to the doctor, but I dared him to say, when they would ask him, well, how do you feel? Are you sad? I would dare him to say yes, because I knew they'd medicate him and said that he had a mental illness. He's fine now after his sister baked him a pound cake and he went back home to his town and hung out, and he hasn't really had a problem since. So the idea that you could be sad and that can be a mental illness, but yet colonization, enslavement for centuries is not. It's just like there's something wrong with the system. But on a positive note, I'm really honored that Dr. Weed has come on board with the I Am Amari International. So he'll be part of the project wherever we're able to serve across Africa and doing some of these services and being able to do psychodrama that he is so well trained in and so many other things. One of the things that he didn't talk about that maybe would be another time is that he's also, maybe say something briefly about the doulas, because he has so many skills and that he brings to the table. Can you say a little bit about that? We had a midwife on a few weeks ago. What is a doula? Is it doulos? How do you?
Yes, it's a Greek word or a Greek origin, a word of Greek origin that actually I understand that means slaves, and it's this helper who helps either in the birthing process or helps in postpartum process. I am a postpartum doulos, and I'm saying doulos being masculine opposed to a feminine. And studies have found that women do well when they do have this assistant. And of course, we know that Native women, African women are dying 3 times the rate of white women in terms of birth. In fact, the deaths are so high in the Black community, they're speaking about a 4th trimester, because you can't, just because you have the baby doesn't mean that you're out of the woods. It means that more women, Black women, are dying after the birth of the baby within that first year. So a male doulos is someone who was attending to the male, to the father, or to the expecting father. And of course, if you complement the male and the woman is being supported, you're complementing the family. In the United States, for those of you who don't know, there's been a whole history of excluding the father, so much so that all of the resources were geared towards maternal and infant health, right? So what happened, like the father doesn't count. And because the father has been systematically excluded, it also means that it lowers their contribution, and the lowering of their contribution, it heightens the rate of infant mortality and heightens the rate of maternal mortality. So as a doulos, a male doulos, my focus is on the father, the expecting father, but being trained as a doulos or doula, I'm able to work with the women as well, but my focus is geared towards the men. And I think this is so important, particularly for people of African descent who are living in nation states in which the men have been targeted. I think it's quite important because the amount of rape that happens in the Black community sometimes is said is like 15 times higher the rate of the rape that happens in white community. And I think this goes back to slavery, when the men had to stand aside, leave whatever hut they was living in, when the so-called slave masters would rape not only their wives, but their mothers, as well as their children. So when you look at this country in the United States, you find a high rate of pedophilia that has been a part and parcel of this country. And I really appreciated the slides that you showed earlier when you were singing Nina Simone and the different women. So the Black female body has been the object of scorn and production, where once slavery was declared inadmissible in terms of importing so-called captives, then it put into place, okay, well, we can't import them anymore. So can we make them reproduce? Can we just make them into birthing machines? right? And this country has never reconciled that. So much so that with respect to breastfeeding, Toni Morrison, the Bluest Eyes, where the mother has to take care of the white child and not give milk to her own child, right? So through epigenetics, through historical trauma, we're beginning to kind of put all these little pieces together. So it's not just microaggressions, it's mesoaggressions and it's macroaggressions all together, actually living in the body. Trauma lives in the body, doesn't live in the mind, it lives in the body. And it lives in the body. And when we do trauma healing, what we're trying to do is give voice. We're trying to bring in the frontal lobes and bridge the left and right side of the brain. So now we can actually name it. So in the trauma work that I do, it's very delicate. It's very intentional, where we go down to the trauma and then come back up, and go down to the trauma and come back up. But most of it, when people are traumatized, they can't explain what happened because they've lost control of their frontal cortex. So they can remember sounds, they can remember smells, they can remember a touch, right? Sometimes you can bring people into a room and they can smell something. All of a sudden you see them like freaking out. Why? Because that's reminding them of a trauma experience that they haven't been able to give name to. So the work is working in the body, right? Because trauma lives inside the body.
Excellent, excellent. So that's why I'm so honored to have him working with Mari, and Amari working with his organization. So I wanted to take a second, though. I see a few people came on. I don't know if you know, Dr. Moody, if you know Queen Mother Leona. I don't see your QM, but I know that she's with the National Black Council of Elders as well. Can you unmute? And then there's Manley. Hold on one quick second, Queen Mother. Manley Louise, I see, is from the Caribbean. Manley, where are you from? I know Prince Andrew knows, but it's good. And I see I don't know where, Neoma. If each of you can unmute, and then Patricia, those who are not, well, you may not know anybody. So why don't we start just giving your name and your location, so we'll know we're dealing with mental health and trauma. We've covered a lot of good information. Dr. Muid, who is our special guest, is also a doulos, working with men around maternal child health as well. So he has a number of areas that he could respond to, but can each of you just give your name, location, tell us just a couple words about yourself.
Hotep, everyone. My name is Queen Mother Leona. I'm from Colorado Springs. I'm a psychotherapist in the area. I have a dance studio where I do dance therapy, and I'm great to be here.
Lifetime member of Association of Black Psychologists as well.
Please put your email in the chat, because part of my work, Wahine Misu, is bringing all of these expressive arts together for healing. So I would like to be in touch with you.
Ashe, I'll do that.
Manley, can you unmute?
Yes, I can unmute. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Your location, a little bit about you.
Yes, I am Madly Louise. I am in Martinique, French Caribbean. And I am creating a startup, a peace innovation ecosystem, and around arts, empowering through arts, healing through arts, indigenous wisdom and science. And I am also going into plant medicine, and that's it. Thanks a lot. And healing trauma, of course.
Thank you so much. I'd like to know more about the plant medicine. And then Neoma, is that it? Lino? Can you unmute? Is it Lino?
Well, that person's coming on. Somebody said Martinique.
Oh, they're on it, just unmuted. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Unmute again real quick. Lino, you can unmute.
Yeah, hello.
Yes. Where are you calling from, and who are you? Tell us a little bit.
I'm Nima Tranquileno. I'm calling from Guinea-Conakry. I'm a member of UnityNet, Africa and Diaspora, and I'm also the project director for Guinea chapter. So this is so interesting for me. That's why I attended the meeting, just to listen to what is going on. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And then the last, Patricia Tyler. I don't see the Owens. Patricia Tyler. Mhm.
Hello, I'm Patricia, and I am the sister of Onaje Muid, and I am just getting involved with the social service aspect of community and healing. I've always been in administration, my career, and now I'm moving over to be more involved with community and following my brother's practices and learning how to be productive and contributive to my community and my family and healing, the whole healing process.
Ashe, maybe we can get you into Sawubona too. Go ahead, Dr. Muid, the floor is yours. I just wanted to, well, we don't have like, Stephanie and Lloyd, because I don't think he met you all. And Hendrik, that's just really quickly, can you give us a quick?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie Schuler, and I'm based in Toronto, Canada. And I'm director of the Unity Network International, and also a founder and director of Maui Aloha Project, Eco Village Initiative. And, you talked about the systems, how all these systems that we live in worldwide, were created under this colonial, from this colonial perspective of dominance and superiority. And my background right now, I am completing my doctorate in education, and it's Mental Health Awareness Month, as Prophet Cox talked about, and everything that I do, it's about holistic well-being. And the school as a system predominantly looks at, intellectual and academic results, does not care about does not focus per se on the holistic well-being of the children. And we know that worldwide, more than 50% of children suffer from, as you said, anxiety, depression, ancestral traumas, and even cutting and suicide are more normalized now than they ever were. And from my perspective, anything that we need to do, whatever we're doing in the system of education and the other systems as well, is not working, because more than 50% of the children are depressed, and in major ways do not have mental health. And that, for me, needs to be the focus of everything that we do for the children who are going to be the leaders of our communities and of the families, and I'm so grateful for all the expressive arts as we talked about, because those are some of the things that we've removed from the school and the classrooms, and those are definitely outlets for healing and well-being and for community engagement, bringing interfaith, intercultural communities together, through sports and dance and music. As I say, you don't even need to speak the same language. So, all and of course, being embedded more in the outdoors for everybody is such crucial medicine. So, systemically, there needs to be a whole restructuring of education, and that's my focus for the well-being of the children and the communities of tomorrow. That's got to start from anew. So I really appreciated your all of you, your comments on that these systems still perpetuate what has been going on here for hundreds of years, and from the beginning of time also. And we've got to try to influence these structures for the well-being of the children, for the mental health and well-being of our communities. So thank you so much for your talk.
Thank you so much. We have Lloyd and Professor Lloyd and Hendrik we have about 8 minutes. So if you can jump in.
Yeah, I think as a South African, we've experienced many of this due to the apartheid system that we've induced in this country. The problem, though, is that even if you look at the South African schooling system, people are chasing statistics, good statistics. And there's so many people that fall out by the wayside that's not being calculated in the end result. If you look at our grade 12 or matric, as we call it, rates in South Africa, it's improving all the time. But if you start analyzing it, you find out that if you take the amount of people that enroll in this 12-year school program and the amount that finish, there's a big problem. Things don't add up. And we've been living with this problem now for another 30 years. It must lead to bigger problems in the future. I think that, one of the problems of a forum like ours is we are talking to like-minded people. Most of the people here share the same opinions. But as a fact, what's happening in the world and in several countries is we really don't deal with that. We are measuring, we are reporting, but there's not much change. The fact that my speciality is to agricultural engineering, to make sure that there's processes and that will provide nutrition and fiber to the world. But it's definitely not addressing the problems that we are identifying every Tuesday evening. In engineering, when you start up a generator and it's running, and you start up the next one, you use the first generator that is running and giving you the right frequency and everything to pull in the next one. And we will have to start using good news, success stories to pull in, the others. We need to synchronize to make sure that there's more good stories than bad stories. And I don't know, I'm not a specialist in the field, and I don't have the credentials of the people speaking at this forum. I'm an agricultural engineer with a master's degree in industrial engineering, and I know a lot about soils and stuff, but about people. And that's what makes the world go around, is to have healthy people that are tending to the real problems in the world. I must choose my words very carefully as a very advantaged, privileged person that had all the opportunities in life, and my children had all the opportunities in life. So sometimes we don't know how to grapple with these social problems that we are dealing in the world. But I know that for us to be successful, we will have to take off the blinkers and identify the real cause of what we are dealing with. Thank you.
Hendrik, thank you so very much for that. I hope to talk with you as well, because my first discipline was industrial engineering. And the thing that stuck with me the most was the system of simultaneous equations. So for some of you who may not know what that is, it's a mathematical process, procedure, operation that says if you have a certain number of unknowns, which are called variables, you have to have equally the number of independent equations, and you solve them all together. That stuck with me for a very long time, and I'm hoping to consult with other industrial engineers and to kind of create a way of transforming that into social theory and also a way of creating social problems. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I look forward to speaking with you about that, Hendrik.
Wow, who knew? The rest of us who barely know whatever the social equations piece is. But anyway, just joking. And some of these things get so deep, you just know when people, you run into somebody who has a commonality, it's just really interesting. So good, good, good. We still have a quick one for Lloyd and for Oshunia. Oh, there she is. Okay, yes. Lloyd, why don't you go first?
Yes, thank you so much, Prophet Cox. So I am Lloyd Halfordy, Chief Ecosystem Director and Program Development Director, given the title of Sustainable Society Consultant with Energym University, which is located in New York and Manhattan. But I'm actually in Canada, in the city of Markham, actually just north of the city of Toronto. And so my interest, of course, in what Prophet Cox is doing every week on Tuesday is to bring together all of the healers, all the practitioners who can really solve some of these issues. I forget the word you use, these equations, and I've heard that before, and I know that I remember I never got really well schooled in that. But I know that, like, for instance, you can use Microsoft Excel as an example to solve these multiple equations that come together. But I think this is really what we're trying to achieve through the Global Unity Network, is to bring all of these best practitioners. So what we want to do is actually what we're moving toward is creating something we call the Global Partnership for Regenerative Development. So as we're moving through this phase from 2015 to 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, well, we can't sustain the systems we have because they are destructive. They are cannibalistic, actually, on people and the environment. So we need to transition the economy to one that is regenerative. So we regenerate ourselves and our environments wherever we live, socially, mentally, emotionally, and physically, of course, as sort of the basis. So we're focusing actually on a universal attribute of all humans, food, because we all eat. So every human on earth is eating. So we use that as the lens for the approach to communities. And we build what we call unity gardens, which are cooperative, collaborative learning centers, especially for youth, but for people of all ages. And so this is the network we're building, this collaboration. And now we're moving forward with launching this collaborations, global collaboration for regenerative development, so we can position ourselves as we approach the end of the Sustainable Development Goals in 2030. What's the next phase? So what happens post 2030, the 2030 to 2045 period of time? We'd like that to be to come up with a set of regenerative development goals. What are the goals that we need in place globally to regenerate our economy, to regenerate our health, to regenerate our ecosystems, to regenerate our biodiversity in our communities? And so this is the challenge we have, I think, over the next 8 years or so, is to come together as a community through the UnityNet to come up with what are those goals that we need to achieve a regenerative economy. And that, I think, is probably the biggest challenge of the human species right now.
Thank you.
And I'll end there.
Thank you so much, so much, so much. I want to throw in my little side note, and I want Awu to jump in just because it's just a comment, because I do really, I have young people, grandchildren, great-grand now, to see them come up and have, I guess what I'm trying to get is this holistic approach. We have those who are very focused on working with the youth, but I'm also happy we also have, they're not on here today, Juliet and Malika, who are working with the elders as well, because I think that to take the children, the Jesuits said, somebody, at least it's a quote I remember, give us your children and for so many years, and then we'll have them forever. That when I hear youth without hearing elders, I think of taking kids from families and raising them in a particular philosophy. I think in engaging the whole family, and also in a lot of cultures, it's the elders who bring the wisdom keepers. And so how to keep, and I think that's part of your work is to be able to not, but you have to have people in sort of in their lane doing whatever they do, because we do better when we do what we do well. So I don't want to contradict my own self, but I'm just saying the idea that it is a holistic movement, that we have people in each sector. So Oshunye, I apologize for having you last, but can you unmute?
No problem. I would like to thank everyone here today. This has been phenomenal as usual. And special thanks also to Dr. Muid. Is that how you pronounce it? Muid?
Yes, Muid.
Muid. Thank you so much. One of the things I do in my holistic practice is helping people to release trauma. So what you presented today was really awesome, because what I have found with dealing with people with quote unquote issues is that the issues is whatever their trauma is or was, and whatever happened to them on whatever level, and they're holding on to that in their body, like you spoke. So what I do is help them release that through the use of NLP, which is neuro-linguistic psychology. So I thank you for your presentation that really helped me see a different or a deeper perspective of what I do. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Prophet Cox.
You're welcome. Oshunye and I have been doing holistic work for a long time. We used to have what we call the African spa during Kwanzaa. We had a whole room set up where people would come in and we do hands-on healing, reflexology, etheric surgery, Reiki, whatever. And there is a way to release doing some of that hands-on indigenous healing. What do you call it? What is the word for well, it's a way of just knowing what's kind of going on. So there are some things that come.
Intuition.
They have a word for it in terms of indigenous people.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll think of it in a second. Starts with an S, I think. But anyway, so there's just a way of knowing that something is going on, without diagnostics, which is something going back to ancient times. We had Dr. Zulu on recently. The technology is great that we have today, but apparently there are some things that were happening pre-technology that technology is actually making an attempt to mimic, but really there were some things happening before the tools were created in the sense that we know them. So go ahead, Dr. Muid. Oh, I see a hand with Prince Andrew.
Yes, thank you so very much. I just want
I'm sorry, shamanic is the word. I'm sorry, everybody, go ahead. Shamanic healing.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because actually one of my stepfathers was a shaman. So the one that actually was the first person in my first 6 years of life. So I do have a very close understanding of the shamanistic activities and power. But a housekeeping note, in the chat, I put a link to this stream event on Facebook. Also, I just put a link into the group on Facebook where the previous week's episodes are also there. And responding to Heinrich, I have to agree with him that it is, in fact, that these meetings a lot of times bring like-minded people together, but that is the intent. This is, as I say, being hosted by Andrew Networks, but I'm Andrew. But I do it not so much because of my birth name, but because historically Andrew opened the door for Peter to Jesus. And so Lloyd sometimes calls this a door opening network. So our intent is to open the doors to these collaborations going forward. But beyond that, this is intended to be just a warm up. We're doing this now on Zoom, but the intent is for us to package these presentations in such a way that we can reach a wider audience. Because it is very true that, as Heinrich mentioned, right, we are like-minded. But here's the thing. Look at the plethora of the talents and skills and abilities that we have here. Look at the mosaic that we represent. This is what our children don't see much, but this is our reality. So we do look forward in the future to be able to package this for a wider audience than Zoom. For example, we have a pending channel on the Universal Citizens Media Network. Among our ambassadors, Lloyd Helferty, as he mentioned, was one of our Goodwill ambassadors appointed back in 2019. I've been appointing Goodwill ambassadors since I was one back in 2009. But our global Goodwill ambassador is Lady Alicia Hamilton. We have a standing channel available online at Universal Citizens Media Network, UCIT.tv. And for those in the in the faith-based area, TRN.tv, the Revelation Network. Both of those are components of what's rolling out, we hope, within the next 30 days, which was NWN.tv. Originally, that was the Nakori, which is the Adinkra word for truth, the Nakori network, but that's now evolved into the, I think it's New World Network, NWN.tv. However, this will be reaching audiences on Roku and Amazon Fire for both terrestrial and satellite audiences around the world. So, of course, what we're lacking here, from my perspective, is a packaging of what we're doing in a professional manner that is as exciting to our millennials as is that first video that Prophet Cox showed. So until and unless we can get our millennials involved and get them to understand that they have to be the ones behind the camera and behind the mics as well as in front of it to help take our message to the ones that we really need to reach, which is them, I think we're still going to be in a learning phase, in a learning curve. But I made a commitment to be here for you on a weekly basis for at least the next year so we can work this thing out as we go. Thank you, Prophet Cox. And thank you, Dr. Weed. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Balls back to you, Prophet Cox.
Thank you so much, Prince Andrew. And Prince Andrew, we call him Prince Andrew because you have to tell your story about being a prince from lineage in Nigeria. But thank you, everyone. And we run over always. We're going to work on that because we're supposed to end at noon or before noon. We can end in an hour or whatever. But this was excellent, excellent, excellent. So I thank everyone for coming. Oh, I see Lloyd has his hand up. Okay. Go ahead real quick.
Just very quickly, I just wanted to respond to Andrew and to say I'd like to see if we can connect to Hollywood North somehow and get the young people involved in packaging this stuff.
Well, again, I'm happy to provide the platform here. However, I refuse to be the one to get into the nitty-gritty of what you do with it. So I would encourage any of you that have contacts here to connect them with me. I'll be happy to provide the connection with you and them.
And that's great. I haven't done a lot with youth, but I can tell you this because I hear a lot about working with youth and sometimes they don't show up. But I've worked with some youth and I don't know, I know they're different in some ways, but I've found people of all ages have some basic needs. Whether I'm in the classroom with them and they said they're gangs, or one young lady said, well, I'm down with the blues and I'm down with the reds. And she said, what are you down with? And when I mean, so I'm just saying that the idea that we have to turn around, touch the ground and spit in the wind, they want what we want because sometimes we're adults and children in adult bodies still wanting to be cared for, still wanting boundaries set appropriately, still wanting certain basic things. And I found in my engagement with them that when they get that, they do come. So rather than just a suggestion, rather than getting into an adult kind of thinking when we're really like kids sometimes in the body because we've been traumatized and stuck at that moment in time and all that. But just an idea. So maybe whenever you have a group about young people, but so that's it. But I want to thank everybody for coming. We can go on and on and on with this.
Before you go, I apologize.
I knew you had muted, but
for example, Maddie Louise is what I would consider to be a representative of youth on this particular call. Mm-hmm. So what I mean is that the youngest person among us, right? I'm encouraging and empowering the youngest person among us to be the one to open doors for us and also open the doors through us to their networks, right? Because now, even though I'm 64 years old, I'm on the National Advisory Board for the Universal Hip Hop Museum. I'm also a brand ambassador for Generation Hip Hop. So it's not that I don't have access to these types of people, but again, without having the support and guidance of the people that I'm involved with, like you, then it's difficult to connect that dot. So I'm just saying to you that if we find ways to get the message to reach out, I can find a way to get the message to the right people to respond.
And I would love to see Manley have one of these presentations, because every time I hear her speak, I just want to hear her speak more. But I've seen her as a participant. So Manley, I don't know if you can unmute, but she has so much. We talked on one of the things about something esoteric almost, and I just about went through the roof because it was so exciting. But I don't know. That's right. And Lloyd was going to, what was that? It had something to do with light or something. But anyway, it was something that I thought from that day forward, we were going to change the world, but we haven't done anything else with it. Oh, I don't know that.
I just think the same. We are going to change the world.
We are changing the world.
I know, but this was a particular project that was going to connect us with you, Manley. So I've seen this is like the third or fourth time I've seen you, and I'm so excited every time you speak. And so being able to hear you maybe on a presentation and be able to connect with you, like
yes, I'll be pleased to do that. But if you allow me, I just want to reflect a little on what I've heard after my introduction.
Okay. Take as much time as you like. We're on our own clock, so go ahead.
Okay, great. Yes, I just want to say that actually, for the storytelling, I am completely convinced that we have exactly to make with the ancient legends and all the orality knowledge, we have to maybe now mix ancient and modern knowledge, wisdom, and science to create these stories, to create stories that are actually decolonized and that can actually be an alternative to the official history, but also to even the hegemony of fairy tales and of legends in the Western world and in the global world, consequently. I also want to reflect on the shamanic, juristic, and the healing abilities. Yes, I resonate with that, and I think that very lately, I've been introduced beside to the plant medicine and to psychedelics businesses, all that, to the energetic interaction between humanity and the heart field, and the importance of the brain, the earth-brain coherence and the earth-mind synchronization in the trauma process. And actually, all that has a connection with brain waves, consequently sound therapy. And that was what the ancestors were actually doing in the sound therapy. There's a book of, I guess that's David Robinson. I don't really remember. I'll check the information. And actually, this man is a writer, indigenous, and is speaking about hungry settlers, meaning that when the colonizers arrived, they applied their way of listening on indigenous sound, and consequently, they missed so many things, and they completely empty the sound healing from its original meaning and symbolism and use. And actually now with the sound therapy and other discourses that can emerge, we can now study further these indigenous sound healing processes and compare them with the modern knowledge on sound therapy, but also waves, Schumann resonance, because of course, our art is also synchronized to the frequency of the earth. And I am also an environmentalist. Consequently, I am really, really interested in the interaction between our brain waves, earth waves, and the planet. And also I am studying, that's my main concern there. I am studying actually the space that inhabits the artist the shaman, and also the creative or the neurodivergent in society, because I really think that they are actually tapping into this universal consciousness, and to get their inspiration, to get their idea, to be aligned and to be actually connected. And I am working on that, and that's it. So I wanted to thank you, because I can see that there's a resonance again between all our works. And of course, that's the same with the dance between, because that's actually the movement and the relationship, meaning that in African aesthetics, we have the aesthetics of the movement, and in the European, the Western side, we have the aesthetic of beingness. And actually now I think that there's a crisis in the beingness, and consequently we have to think again what is being us, but also what is the other and the otherness, and consequently bridge a gap and being able as human being to enter in movements, meaning in relationship, and to encounter others differently, to be able to encounter ourselves also differently, and to be able to resonate, to vibrate, and to finally, what is the name? To finally radiate, I don't know, other frequencies. And I think that that's only this synchronization that can actually elevate consciousness and just have an influence on habits and practices. Okay, that's it. That's what I wanted to say, and I'll be pleased to schedule some meeting or some stuff. I just want to say, last week I said that I had some networks. Yes, because we can open our networks when the purpose is the same and when the values are the same, I think. And I just I didn't engage myself. I just speak about an idea that I have, because with my startup I am organizing some arts exhibition, but mixed art, meaning there's a place for all artists. And of course, I would like to do this stuff aligned with the development goals. And I just asked, because I had an appointment on Thursday with the CDHA, which is a network of facilitators in South Africa. And I think that this network is really interesting, because they are actually at the end of their life. And there's many elders that worked all their life in South Africa and worldwide with communities, and who had a lot of knowledge in the healing process, indigenous and non-indigenous. And actually they are using writing to try to exchange on their experience of all these years. And consequently, as a young startup, I asked them if we can collaborate, because their knowledge can't be lost. And that because they know many communities, and they are authentic in their ways with the communities. Consequently, I think that maybe they can be connectors, and maybe they can introduce us to the real needs of community, but also to the real arts creation and values, because they are also working in that direction, opening inner universes within people to allow them to be who they are and to heal. For this network, that was interesting, because they are really interesting. I just have to email them. So we'll see, that can be great. And there's another one which is more related to a summer school I did in digital art for my artistic personal activities. But finally, that's not really personal because I also implement that in the business. And they are also interesting as searchers because they are into humanities. And of course, everybody wants to finally get into communities that can push further their values. Consequently, I think that beside the communities in Caribbean that are involved in healing and in arts, we can also relate on other organizations and especially people who are working on the sound healing protocols, the dance also, and also which other field I saw. Yes, people who are working also on holding space with others and on social presencing, deep listening, which are actually indigenous practice, which are remodernized today and introduced in the Western ways of healing. But actually that's a reappropriation and a benefic one, I think, of ancient knowledge. And rather than speaking about indigenous knowledge, I more speak about ancestral knowledge because I just think that we are all indigenous from somewhere, and that ancestral is maybe more appropriate because before colonization, we all were peoples. Okay, thanks a lot for listening.
So Melanie Louise, your homework.
Can I say something really quick though? Melanie, don't mute yet because I want to ask her for a date because to start with the frequencies because
okay.
Yeah, a date like the 14th of June or something like that. I don't know what you're available.
Perfect.
Okay, the 14th of June at the same time because frequencies, I mean, you hit on some pretty heavy duty stuff because everything has a vibration frequency, every organ does. So while we're running around getting new pharmaceuticals with side effects, if any time we can resonate to whatever that frequency is, to the liver, kidney, or whatever, we have health. It's not to sound like it's that simple. It's not that simple, but at least we need to hear about the fact that we don't have to keep pouring and tearing up the earth and doing stuff and dumping stuff in people's bodies when really, if we can get it to a vibratory rate of health, there are words that we speak that deteriorate organs. So it's like certain words are like secondhand smoke, I tell people. So if they're about doing certain words, I don't talk to them. And so, so the 14th of June, we're going to talk about frequencies. Also, I wanted one Tuesday every month to be devoted to healing the earth. And that is without any of all the technology, just using ancient knowledge and ancestral wisdom to heal the earth.
But we are the technologies, actually.
We are the technology. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, the 14th, we have you down. Everybody heard that. So let me get, you're on WhatsApp, right?
Yes, I am on WhatsApp, yes. And for the 14th, that's okay. I can. I'll check my agenda. Yeah, my calendar. Yeah.
Lloyd put down, talk about frequencies. No, Lloyd, we're going to do frequencies. We'll talk about them too. But
I'm just saying that the talk on the 14th will be about
right. The topic. I'm just messing with you. Thank you so much, Melanie, because I know every time I've heard you, I just wanted to just fly, just take off and fly. I remember it was visualization or something that we talked about before, but there's so much that we can do, And
yes, that's because what we need to create, what we want to create needs to be created. That's what we are feeling all together.
Yes.
I actually wanted to mention
we want millions of dollars to do it, but what we're talking about is built into who we are when we were birthed into this world. And so that's part of my calling, is to help people tap into what the divine or whatever you want to call it inside, but there's something in us that can do this without even leaving our chair. So, thank you, man. So I got you down, man. Oh man, this is a miracle. See, Dr. Mahmoud, you have brought out giving birth to something up in here.
Lloyd, I wanted to mention.
Lloyd, I see your hand.
Excuse me, just a question. Yes. I am going to send an email in the network, in the Unity and all that, to know if you want me to push further with some networks, and to know what you want me to say, because there's also some centers, actually physical centers in Martinique, and I I follow them for a while. I know they are authentic and I know they are for love and light.
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to say before you get started, Lloyd. The homework I like to give you, Maddie Louise, if you decide to accept it or not, is to make a list of what you've discussed and then put them in order of priority for what you want to accomplish. And then we can create a calendar of events for the next year to make sure we touch on all those topics.
Awesome.
And Natalie,
Okay, that's
Louise,
great.
but Natalie Louise, I would like for you to be a regular on here because the frequency piece, we're not once a month. I would like to be able to focus strictly on healing the planet using frequencies and other ancient wisdom. One time a month. If you want to take the second Tuesday of every month, we're going to heal the planet without leaving our chair.
Okay, great. And excuse me, what does that mean? I am Amade?
Oh, aromatic?
Amari. I am Amari.
Oh, Amari. I have to tell you about that. There's a story to go with that. But
we're on our own time.
Okay, so it was from a vision. It was from a vision. And there's more to it, that there's somebody has to do with sound, because when I saw it in a vision, it came with the asterisk on the E, and I didn't know what it meant. And I said, what is it? And I was kind of guided to it. So I am Amari, and I now have a logo. I got the vision of what colors should be in the logo and all that. So everything is frequency, and that's so, but if we can do that, and then also what I would like, and Oshunya is on here too, because we were snatched away as our ancestors were, as yours were. Many of us who are healers, if we had the opportunity to be born in Africa, then we would have gone through rites and rituals in Africa. That didn't happen for us. So we're just out here, at least for me, I'm the eldest probably in here at 72, been stumbling around for a lot of years, not thinking this was just the way, but not knowing what to do with it. And so now, we're wanting to have a collective of healers, a collective healers council, and we in the diaspora that's a part of the reparations, Dr. Muid, the fact that we were denied even ritual and to be able to grow up in those systems. And now we want that. And so with the people you have in the Caribbean, we have people in Africa and all over, we want a system, a collective of healers, and we want the rituals, we want the accreditations. We were looking at accreditation around healers, and there are all these things out here in the UK and everything, and hoops you got to jump through. We want ancestral type of accreditation system that we can invite people who are, Harriet Tubman, for instance, she would fall out and have visions, the way she got her folks from the South to the North with dogs and guns and all that without losing one. She would just fall out and be out for a period of time, come to and have a vision that would lead her to safety with the people. George Washington Carver, who was a scientist, and they asked him how did he learn so much about the sweet potato and the peanuts and stuff. He said the plants told him. So we were here. We came through. Our ancestors came through the My Alpha, and then we birthed us. Those who were healers were also taken, except their descendants have not been able to come up and get the rites of passage and the ceremonies and the blah, 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 but we've been out here doing healing work. So connecting with that root somehow, and you're moving around, there's got to be some accreditation for all of us, and we don't have to jump through, colonizers, hoops and stuff to be able to say that we're doing the work. Shamanic, I say shamanic, somebody, you're too young, maybe somebody here is old enough to remember, maybe Hendrik, Red Skelton, but anyway, he had a niece, and she said to me, she said that she had met several shamans around the world, and that she, because of my situation at the time, I was morbidly obese. I've dropped 117 pounds recently, but she said if I found my village and went into that system, that would shift. So again, frequency, she said, because shamans of old, they belong to a village, and that's where their work was. They were not just running around like I do without walls and stuff, which I do. But anyway, so it's just a whole little story about it.
Like to add to that. In COBRA, the National Coalition of Blacks Reparations, we've identified at least 5 injury areas to begin with. Peoplehood is the first one. So you're speaking about the people having their religion, having their culture, having their way of life that we've been robbed of. So peoplehood is one of the injuries. Criminal punishment is another. Poverty and wealth is another. Education is another, and health is another. So what you're saying is that we have to come to know all the different ways that we've been denied the crimes of enslavement, the crimes of Jim Crow, the crimes of post-Jim Crow, which is mass incarceration. So when we talk about repair, we're talking about a sensation of the guarantee of non-repetition, restitution, compensation, satisfaction, and rehabilitation. Most of my work is in the area of rehabilitation, and everyone here has really contributed to that conversation. I'd like to thank all of you for all that you have contributed and continue to contribute to, because we're on a mission and we're just not going to be denied. There is going to be a new humanity. We are the new humanity. We're the ones that we've been waiting for. It's just for us to become more organized. In many instances, it's just that, Lakota said that wasichu, right? Those who want to eat all the fat, eat all the good things, the wasichu is, in Buddhism, they talked about the hungry ghost, where you have this very skinny neck and this very big belly, right? And just can't get enough. This greed is killing all of us. And then we have to assert our power to stop these warmongers that wants to create, war and destruction and harm and injury. We have to continue to grow ourselves and work together. And the thing which is so surprising to me, I know it's not going to happen like this, but all the people of the world, most of the people of the world are workers, right? All the workers would have to do is just say, I'm not going to work today. It's just it's so simple that it's incredible. All we have to do is sit down and say, no, we're not going to work today. Until we have these kinds of things in place, we're not going to go to work. So guess what? The whole world would stop. But we just don't have the consciousness, because we have been segregated in such a fashion to think that I can't let you get ahead. If I let you get ahead, that means less for me, right? There's some zero game, what's her name? I can't think of her name right now, but she wrote The Soul of Money, Lynn Twist. And she talks about this dichotomy between those who have the poverty or scarcity consciousness and those who have the abundance consciousness, right? So those who have the scarcity consciousness are consuming everything because they think there's not enough, right? But there is enough for everyone. How many billionaires do we have in this country? How many millionaires do we have in this country? Right, so there is enough, but it's just really our mindset. So we're going to keep on raising up the vibration in ourselves and our family and our communities and our political organizations, and call for and demand and not settle for anything less than the repair of the world.
So Dr. Moeed, does the name Yao Kepra Felix Wilson mean anything to you? Yao Kepra Felix Wilson. Because as I understand it, he's involved with your organization at some capacity. But let me take a step backwards and ask Prophet Cox, is there not an Amari organization? Did you not tell me that you had founded that as a company? Dr.
I don't have paper on it. When I get some money, I'll put some paper on it, but I don't have paper. But I did notice that Lloyd put in there the Amari Global was out there, and it's a wellness thing. I clicked on it and they sell some products or teas or candy or something, but it's called I Am Amari International. So when I get something out, but yeah. It came to me in a vision. It came to me in a vision this year. I was just praying about some stuff, and I literally saw a screen like a movie screen at the end when you have credits, and I saw all these credits of my years of experience, and I was looking at it, and in the middle of it jumped up Amari, and I'm like, what the heck is that? So it was one of those kind of shamanic spiritual downloads, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, let's talk offline, because for less than $100, we can get you started. But Lord Helfrey, you've been very patient, and we do thank you so much. So Lloyd, the floor is yours.
And Dr. Moeed, yeah, because it's way over our time. You see how we did 5 hours the other day, but we're not doing that today. So, but I'm glad we went on, because I have Madly on to do. Oh, I mean, I would love the frequency thing. I just vibe to that. Like I can stay up there, do what you love, and I can stay up day and night and do those kinds of things. So thank you everybody for coming and for staying, and we're going to sign off. There's nothing else.
Lloyd has his hand raised.
Okay, Lloyd.
I just wanted to mention that Madly did join. I guess it was a few months ago. So I put into the chat the link to UnityNet Caribbean, which is so far just Madly and myself.
Okay. Can I join that? Can you put?
Oh, absolutely. The link is in the chat. So if you save the chat, it's there. She's also a member of many more of our networks, including the Eco Village Network and the Arts Network and the Children and Youth Network, and of course the Africa Diaspora Network, and the Culture and Diversity Network and the Gardens Network. But I think, coming back to an earlier conversation, you were saying, oh, we had some early conversations with Natalie. So I've talked with her as well about the Dream Boards initiative.
Yes, that's what it was. Yeah.
Haven't done that yet. So we need to do that, I think, as part of the engagement with youth and families, where we can start bringing the youth and create these dream boards in all of our communities, and where we can have these sessions where we can bring these visions to fruition and then turn them into these virtual reality environments that people can see the future of what their community could be. And this is what the Dream Boards is about.
Here's something interesting, Lloyd. Here's something interesting with the Dream Board. So if we want the young people to come in here, and you probably have already thought of this, one interesting thing to do to get them in is we do a dream board. So if they really work for them, then they ought to work for us, right? Let's do a dream board to get the youth and to bring in some economy and get the accreditation board that we want on. Let's do a dream board. Let's do the things we want them, because they are about seeing something that works. They don't want us to tell them and don't do stuff. I do know that.
I'd like to ask us to repeat after me. Put your hands together, say, I am healing.
I am healing.
I am healing.
I am healing.
I am healing. I am healing. Now we bring crickets into the room and say, you are healing. You are healing.
You are healing.
You are healing.
You are healing.
Now open up your arms and stamp your feet on the floor and say, we are healing. That's the buffalo dance. We are healing.
We are healing.
We are healing. We are healing.
We are healing.
Take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath in. Nothing happens without spirit, and say, the planet is healing.
The planet
is healing.
I am healing. I am healing.
I am
healing.
You are healing.
We are healing.
You are healing.
We are healing.
We are healing.
We are healing.
The planet is healing.
The planet is healing.
Planet is healing.
You know, it's so funny because the book that Prophet had mentioned in the beginning by Queen Afua, actually I'm in that book, speaking about social wellness. So I'm one of the writers in that book.
Very cool.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very cool.
The other thing I like to encourage all of us is identify what we have as income streams, right? And here's another important fact you need to understand. Few of us add to the cost of whatever it is that we're offering what I consider to be critical, which is marketing. Most of us deal with our products and services with what it's going to cost, what it's going to take to deliver. But as you may know, in a startup, it may take a year or more for there to be losses before you even get to a profit. We have to build into our pricing structure, I would think, another 25% on top of whatever it is we're doing, so we can then actually give people incentives to have referrals for us and do sales for us. We've got to find a way to empower our young people. We have to use our own products and services to do that. I'm not asking us to do anything except empower them and empower us with the spirit of abundance. There's always more, so there's no limit on the value that we put on what we offer, except the limit we put up on ourselves. But that's my last comment for today. Thank you. Back to you, Prophet Cox.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, and my computer might run out of battery, but we have abundance and we have enough. And I know that one of the Canadian Indigenous language a word for the equal sign is enough. Is there enough salmon in the river for the community, for the people? Is there enough food for people to eat? And that's it. We intention and dream board for enough and for abundance. So I look forward to doing that with you all.
Ashe.
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 For those who don't know, that's Yoruba. It means that it is established just as we have said. It's like a decree. Very good. Very good. Very good. Very good. That's it, everybody. Going on. Queen Mother Leona, thank you for coming. Natalie, thank you, thank you, thank you. Brother Lino, thank you, thank you, thank you. Dream boards, yes. Dream boards. So we're going to do all that. Very exciting. Thank you for hanging in here with us, Dr. Muid. We ran over, but every bit was shared, and we need to have we're going to do this on the 14th. Manley will be back. Now we'll have the frequency conversation, but we go just like he did. We need to start practicing some of these things, because I'm finding as a healer and working with healers that healers need to heal. We all need to heal. So every time we get a little tool or technique or something we can do, and we need to carry that forth. And the young people are tired of us telling them stuff that we don't do. Do what we say, not what we do. So we got to start doing something that they're impressed with. And they're not, they're pretty bright. They will come when they see success. So, all right, thank you, everybody.
Wait, do we want to open our videos for a goodbye wave or not?
We can open it up. I have my camera up now, so that I think I got it working. Okay. For goodbye shot or something?
Yeah, I haven't learned how to take a shot, so maybe you can send it to me.
Okay, let me take, oh yeah. Okay, hold on. Did I figure out how to do this? Hold on.
All right.
I have to look so I can see.
All right.
So that everybody, okay, good.
Henrik, where are you? Oh, there you are, Henrik. Leona?
That's Matt, Leona, Queen Mother.
Let's do it.
Okay, there she's coming. She's coming.
All right, we're all here.
Okay, we're all here.
All right, family. How?
Okay, hold on a second. Showing you. Yeah, there we go.
All right.
Okay, I pushed the wrong button. Hold on a second. Give me one more second. Because when I looked up, I couldn't see the keys. Okay. One last time. Hold on. One last time. Hold on, one last time.
It won't cost you to take another shot.
Okay, that was it. Okay. I'll send it to you. Thank you.
Okay, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Looking good. Bye-bye.
All right, love to all.
Bye-bye.
I'm gonna wrap it up for the day.
Okay.
Love, light, and peace to all.
Oh, you want to save the chat if you can. And if I have your email in the chat, I'll send it out to you. So make sure you save the chat or put your email address in the chat, one or the other.
Okay. And we'll be able to get this recording from you.
Yeah, it takes a while to process it. It is being live streamed, as I said, on the AHIABGA network, but I'll send you the link as I did yesterday, Prophet, so you can download it to your computer if you choose.
Okay, thank you. I would like that.
All right, love to everyone.
Okay,
all right,
bye-bye. Take us home.
Bye-bye.
Bye, and thank you, everyone.
I love
Thank you.
Love you madly. Bye-bye.
I love you more.
Thank you all.
Bye.
We'll see about that.
Awesome as usual.